lock in there. Nice, there you go. Look at that, completely grabbed.
Hi, it's Todd from Todd's Workshop and Todd Cutler here with
Matt Easton, Schola Gladiatoria.
And we're back with weird medieval weapons, but not medieval today, which is the Swordbreaker. So it's called. Is it, isn't it? Who knows? But what we do have are 2 experienced rapier fencers and 1 Swordbreaker, and they're going to do some sword and dagger work, and we're going to see what happens. Go for it, guys. Oh, he so nearly had him.
It did trap it for a second.
He did. But I think, you know, it's that instinctive thing where you have to pull.
Yeah. So the Swordbreaker dagger is having to be held more point upright than you would, or more than most people would normally hold the dagger, in order for the blade to be able to get in between the teeth. Because if you hold it point down, you don't get the angle for the blade to go in.
He had him done.
So that was more of a deflect, wasn't it? Yeah.
And go again.
So something we noticed was because of the taper of the blades, because they're thicker at the base of the blade, they're actually too thick to get between the teeth.
Right at the base.
But nearer the tip, where the blade's thinner, then it will go in. So you really need to catch it quite close to the tip in order to get the control over it.
Well, that could, in all honesty, that could be a mistake that I've made in the manufacture. It could be the way it is. And that's interesting. I think he's beginning to learn a little bit. But the other thing is, like I was saying before, that you do see them a lot with articulated teeth, so they really do open up.
Yeah.
But that's obviously a far more sophisticated. It totally got it.
I wonder if there's an element also, because these are blunt practice blades, perhaps with sharp-edged blades slightly thinner towards the tip, perhaps they're more likely to get between those gaps. Perhaps for a practice version, those teeth need to be a little bit widened to increase the success rate.
Yeah. Now that's also interesting, because I did a video on this years ago with myself and an equally unskilled swordsman. One of the points that I raised there was it's a kind of a little bit all or nothing. Yeah. That if you trap the blade, brilliant. If you don't trap the blade, you now...
there you go.
And I missed it. Serves me right for talking.
So it should also be worth mentioning that the other dagger in use here has these hooked quillons on it for catching the
ones which are offset deliberately.
So in fact, there are a lot of left-hand daggers which are intended to trap and control an opponent's blade, but just not in the same way. I wonder if this type of blade breaking or blade grabbing, controlling dagger is supposed to be used against a specific opposing type of sword. Maybe it's not a rapier, maybe it's a cutting sword. Because the way that you catch with this type of dagger, the way that you catch it into the teeth, it could be that it's intended to be used against someone with a backsword or a broadsword.
That's actually something that I hadn't considered.
Where you're opposing a cut more than a thrust, because then the angle is going to come more straight in towards the edge.
Because I don't know this for a fact, but if I named a country I expected them to come out of,
there you go.
If I named a country I expected them to come out of, I'd say Italy.
Yeah.
And at the same time you've got rapiers, of course we think rapiers, but you've got loads of storter around as well.
And you've got side swords, and one of the earliest sword and dagger treatises we've got is Marozzo, where there's lots of cutting with the side sword, and he's parrying the cuts. And a side sword would probably go more easily through those teeth than a rapier would, and the angles involved as well are they're quite shallow with rapiers because they're thrusting so much.
Out of interest, how are you finding it? Are you finding it personally a complete waste of time? Is it a learning curve?
I'm finding, even if I don't grab the blade, the fact that it slows it down enough is just enough.
So I wondered that. I wondered whether the friction, rather than having an edge, it gives you some degree more control, doesn't it? It slows the blade down.
It's difficult to actually grab the blade.
Yeah, and what's interesting is if you look at that other dagger, that actually has little filed serrations on one side of it.
Right.
And that is something you find on daggers, is this sort of binding aspect. It just gives you that split second of control.
So in essence, rather than the blade bouncing off in a riposte or whatever, it can't. No.
Yeah.
It's messing up your opponent.
It slows it down, basically, yeah.
So it is interesting. I've only seen 1 or 2 convincing binds.
Yeah. Oh, it went on and came off.
And there.
There you go.
Ah, lovely.
Nice.
Well done, guys.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
But it controlled for long enough for him to get the hit in. So even though it didn't stay in, and I think that's what this is about. It's not, you know, it's a bit like grabbing blades in swordsmanship. It's not about holding on to that thing forever. It's just about controlling it for long enough that you can get your own thrust in.
Which can be 0.2 of a second.
Yeah. Lock in there. Nice. There you go. Look at that. Completely grabbed.
But again, I would have expected him to immediately pull it, but he didn't. There was a little while before he sort of worked out the blade was there.
Yeah.
But I suppose that would come with experience.
So it's a learning curve. Yeah. It's... Oh, there you go. Lock.
Yeah.
So guys, do you think if those teeth were more widely spaced that the success rate would shoot up? Because that's the impression I get.
Definitely,
Yeah.
You can really feel once he gets the ground.
Yeah. I mean, when it goes on, it's absolute, isn't it?
Quiet, you can still feel.
Yeah. So I just feel that if those teeth, if the gaps was just 2 millimeters bigger between them, it would make an enormous difference to the success rate.
Yeah, again, there's kind of thing wrong.
So a lot of this relates to the thickness of the blades. So we specifically changed that rapier out because that's my rapier and it's got a slightly thinner blade, so it's more likely to go through those teeth. And swords that are broader tend to be flatter in this period, you know, side swords, back swords, things like this. And I think they would get stuck in there more often than these rapiers do, because being narrow, they're often thicker to give them rigidity. So I do wonder if that particular dagger with that teeth placement was for use against side swords rather than rapiers. And from the design of the hilt, that very much could be Marozzo's period. That could be an early 16th century version. It could be that a later 16th century version might have wider spaced teeth for rapiers because they're thicker blades.
Well, thank you very much, guys. It was brilliant to see it. What was evident to me was there was definitely learning going on while you were using it. That was quite clear. I think Matt made some really interesting points about perhaps it's for broader blades. Perhaps the teeth are too close together, which, you know, hold my hand up, maybe I did that. I don't know. But what do you guys think?
Yeah, I found the only way I would catch it is if I parry it basically 90 degrees to the blade, which is not really usually how we use that. I want to keep it a little bit more angled.
Particularly against thrusts, and when the thrusts are coming in, you're usually meeting them with the point more forward, and when you've got that angle, it won't go into the teeth. However, what we all noticed was when a cut comes in, then you tend to meet it at more of a square on 90-degree angle, and then it goes between the teeth. And looking at the style of it, I mean, it's got fairly minimal hand protection. That's not always indicative, but I think, I mean, if we just look at the hilt of that could totally be from the side sword era of the 1520s, 30s, 40s. So I think potentially this was intended to be used against side swords rather than rapiers.
To be honest, I didn't feel that it needed to go in to give me an advantage. The fact that it slowed the enemy's blade enough.
Yeah.
It was just enough.
Yeah, that was an interesting point I had just never considered, actually, that just the fact of those teeth being there interferes with what your opponent's trying to do with their blade.
And another interesting...
Even if it doesn't bite,
Yeah.
you still feel like it's caught you and you want to get the blade out.
And another interesting thing you noted was that you felt there might be a lack of hand protection, but actually the fact that you've got that added friction there slows down the thing coming down towards your hand as well. So actually having more of a bind, more friction up on the blade, actually makes your hand safer as well. One thing I wanted to ask actually was, I noticed as I was interested in doing myself, was you turned it around. My impression is that this works better that way round with the teeth on the inside. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, I think most of at least the way I like to use the dagger, most of it goes to my inside.
Yeah. I found just standing in at Todd's place, I found it very difficult to even get it to lock in when it was facing outwards. The angles, for a right-hander anyway, the angles just didn't seem to quite marry up.
Guys, thank you ever so much for that. Matt, again, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for coming down. It's been fun.
Yeah, so Scholar Gladiatoria and your fight school. So,
we're here every Tuesday night and every Friday night in Woking. So,
brilliant. But anyway, thank you very much. Thanks for watching. And, well, the Swordbreaker, still a little bit of a mystery.
It didn't break any swords,
But it
and
didn't-
I'm quite happy about that.
It was never going to break any swords. I think that is a definite misnomer. Thank you very much, guys. Thanks,
Cheers.
guys.
Thank you.
And next time for something else weird. I don't know what that'll be. Lantern shields have to be there somewhere. Anyway, cheers.